Hello and welcome to You Are Not Alone. You Are Not Alone is a 1v1 horror actual play podcast. I'm Blaine, your host and RPG-loving friend. Before we get started, some fun announcements. I just launched a new site for the podcast. Not only does it house info about the show and a way to listen to the podcast, there's also a blog that I'm hoping to update fairly regularly with any news and my thoughts about the games I've been playing. You can check it out at youarenotalonepod.com. I also have the latest episode of You Are Not Alone up on YouTube. If that's your preferred medium for podcasts, and we'll be working on getting all the back episodes up on there over the coming weeks. If you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us on whatever podcatcher you use. It really does help other folks find the show. If you'd like to be a guest, recommend a game, or just say hi, you can reach me on Twitter at notalone_horror. And via email, youarenotalonepod@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. So this week, we're continuing our Troll Hands takeover. Last episode started with Gabriel Robinson joining me to talk about his awesome new game, Token. Token is a duet-rooted in trophy game about a hero and a monster slowly discovering each other in a haunted forest, or fetid bog in our case. It is a really awesome game, and it's going to be part of the Zine Quest 3 Kickstarter event. The game is going live on February 9th, so keep an eye out for it. After we talked about the game, we got started actually playing it. Gabriel is playing Mazara, a hero from a local town whose family is cursed. She's entering this fetid bog, racked by years of war, to find the monster who lives at the heart of the bog and kill it, to end her family's curse. I'm playing Brayden the Recluse, a man corrupted by the war and rot of the bog. Once a surgeon for the armies who protected the fort years ago, Brayden is now a many-limbed monster whose cast-offs, failed surgical experiments, angrily roam the area. Just a warning, this episode does feature a lot of spiders and a lot of body horror, so if those things bother you, please be aware. As Mazara and Brayden discover tokens of one another, their goals and desires will change. How will they have morphed and evolved by the time the two meet? Let's find out. Yeah, and I think when Brayden sees that spearhead, that's the thing he focuses on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we get like a little bit of a mini flashback of Brayden in this same fort when it was still a fort. And he has braces on his legs, and he's again using crutches to move about, and he's watching kind of jealously as soldiers in the fort prepare to march out for battle. And we see that the soldiers in this fort are all wielding spears with that exact same type of spearhead, that obsidian ritual spearhead. And he's just standing there as a younger man watching jealously as they march off to war.
I like that a lot. I kind of don't want to ask further questions about it because I feel like you said it perfectly. It implies a lot of things already. And so you gain a token, which tokens can be physical objects. They can be more abstract like that. But in this game, players are very much encouraged to like echo themes, build on themes. I have a feeling, I've made that a significant object. Maybe it'll come back as we interact more. But finishing the role, I guess my question to you is, you glimpse that. Do you stay within your fortress there, your lair, or do you venture further from there? What do you do next?
That's a good question. I think maybe I don't think Brayden leaves quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we do see is Brayden begin to kind of move around to the various nooks of this fort and start to gather some things. So I think that, like, I think we see him gather some herbs in various ephemera that we now know he has the power to wield in a more magical way.
Mm-hmm.
And also he goes, and one of the areas has a table that's stained in blood and has leather straps, presumably for tying down people that he is performing surgery on.
Mm-hmm.
And in that area, he draws out a very sharp knife and a bit of leather and stone to sharpen it even further.
Mm-hmm.
And so while he doesn't leave, he is preparing.
Awesome. I forgot one key thing is when you get a token, that changes your instinct. And it's up to you what that means. But with your original instinct you have written out, you need to alter that in some way. So do you want to recap what that starting instinct is and how it changes?
Yeah, so this starting instinct is, I seek to reveal the majesty of the forest so that I may shed this twisted shape for that of my former self. How do I want to change that? So I guess this is a good question for mechanics wise. How much should it be changed? How much can it be changed?
That is up to you. When I've played it before, it's usually been one. So the way that we started with those instincts were two different phrases from two tables. I've noticed that usually one half of those changes at a time.
Okay.
But there's no hard rules on that. It might just be, I guess, coming back to that, like if you've seen Mazara entering this place with a sort of concealed weapon and kind of contemplating one of your creations, this is kind of where we want to tie it together a little bit. I don't know. Has Brayden faced other intruders before? Is this like a new threat? Is this just another day where someone's entering here trying to confront him?
Yeah. I think that, I mean, it's not common, but I think that he has faced other intruders. So here's what I'm thinking is maybe what the change I'm thinking about making is to the language of the second part of that, so I may shed this twisted shape. I'm thinking that maybe it's changing because of this memory of the soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of trying to shed his form, he wants to change it instead.
Yeah, yeah.
So changing it so that I may change this twisted shape into that of my former self, maybe just for wording purposes, where it's now this memory has sparked him. Instead of trying to escape the form, he wants to stay in this body, but he wants to change it.
Yeah, that's really good. It's kind of like he's doubling down on it a little bit, using that form and not giving up that past, but leaning into it a little bit. I'm kind of curious to see as we come back to that, like what revealing the majesty of the forest means. I think it's something pretty horrific, but I'm into it.
That is one of the ones that I'm not entirely sure what that means, but we're going to find out. Yeah. And I think, like you said, I don't think it's going to be good.
Right. But that could change too. Yeah.
Yeah. We never know. All right. So then we go back to Mazara.
Mm-hmm. So I think Mazara's been just contemplating this horrific abomination. And it's not like that term has significance to her in some weird way. It's just like, this is a horrific creature, with the extra limbs attached on one side. And I think as it's swimming around in the trench and maybe even starting to like climb towards the side, she just kind of shakes her head and is like, I don't have time to mess around with this thing. Like I came here to meet the creator of this. And she decisively like turns her back on it and starts to walk towards the center of this place through those like web covered dead trees. So I think for now, it's still going to be another reflection roll because she's not facing that threat directly. Unless you want to fill in a little bit with what she sees. I think this might be a chance to flesh out a new location a little bit if you want to, or if you just want to describe what else is beyond those trees.
Yeah, let me look at some of the potential other locations once you kind of break the early line of forest.
I guess I should ask you even before then, like, is she able to walk through those trees, or is this like really dense, like webbing and branches that she has to deal with to get through it?
No, I don't imagine, at least at this point in the area, that it's that bad. Like, it's probably draping down, and as she moves through it, it's that spider web on your body feel that is not the worst, but also not great.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, like, I think Mazara can move through relatively unhindered.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly, like we said, I don't think the forest is that thick right here. So it mostly just gives it this almost like snowy gossamer appearance. Looking at the landscapes, what might be an interesting feature.
If that's further along, I also have an idea for how she might kind of search this immediate, like, webby landscape you described. Either way.
Okay, yeah, let's, if you have an idea for that, let's go with that. And then, I'm imagining this is kind of, like I said, a very thin forest, and these webs are just hanging down.
Mm-hmm. I guess this kind of already is another location based off of that. But I'm picturing with all this webbing kind of obscuring her view that Mazara might use a ritual or a charm to clear the way a little bit, using howl to sort of summon a wind to try to blow some of that webbing out of the way and kind of see further ahead.
I love that.
And also, I think as we're getting to this character, I realize she's maybe has a bit of a temper at this. Is just like, I can't deal with this. Like, I need to get to I don't want to be here, but it looks like the prophecy said it's got to be me or one of my family, and no one else has stepped up. So
I guess that's me.
Yeah. So this could be a challenge roll, but I think because there's not like an immediate threat to her, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that at this point the landscape itself is a threat, and I don't think that there are many of the cast-offs quite yet.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So it'll be a reflection roll, and it's already a dark dice because of using the charm, and then reflecting on her instinct or seeking the other. Let's look at, I'm going to use Oracle with prophecy here. I think if that makes sense. Actually, I think resisting, actually, I'm going to go back to that family curse that she's pushing back against the landscape. Whatever has caused this webbing that's obscuring her vision and blocking her path, she just wants to blow it out of the way so she can see clearer and progress further. Okay,
I think that makes sense.
So that'd be a light dice. And so one light and one dark. And I have a 4 on the light dice and a 5 on the dark dice. So for the reflection roll, if it's a 4 to 5 result, I gain a token, but also the land itself gains a token. So there's actually a few things for you to describe here. The token I find, I encounter something that's dreadful, and that could be pretty tied to the forest, the land itself gaining another token, and the threat escalating a little bit.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so what? I guess the token makes the most sense to start with, kind of as a narrative beat. So I think that as Mazara is, kind of trying to howl and push all of this webbing away, she finds and And I mean, I think you got a partial success at least. So I think it kind of spreads the webbing to the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in kind of the crook of one of the trees, Mazara finds this very old rotting crutch that's kind of wrapped in places still with some of this webbing, and has been in the crook of this tree for a very long time. And I think it's molding, and parts of it are soft to the touch.
I think, so here's a question for you on that, because this is going to change my instinct. Do you think that there are many stories about Brayden the Recluse, as far as, I assume this is like him with his crutches you described earlier? Would that be a known thing to anybody, or is that like a complete secret?
That's a good question. I think maybe, so to turn it around slightly, I'm imagining, based on everything we've said, it sounds like the village you're coming to protect is pretty close by.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that maybe because there have been so many wars that the stories of Brayden are kind of different in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe because this village is so close that it knows a little bit more about like who Brayden was before becoming this kind of bogey story.
Mm-hmm.
So like the further out you get, the more he's just this monster that dwells in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that maybe your village does have some stories that talk about how before he became this kind of monstrous figure, that he was a surgeon for one of the armies that was part of multiple wars in this area, and that he walked with a set of crutches.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a story that like some people discount because it potentially humanizes him too much.
Maybe that's also kind of mixed in with just like the visual of like veterans coming back from these wars, just wounded or maimed with horrific injuries, but some are bearing crutches, or so. I think that brings that history to mind a little bit of all the suffering that's happened. And I don't know if Mazara really knows that personally about Brayden yet or not, but the way it changes her instinct is, instead of to outright slay the monster, I think it's to lay to rest the monster. So
I like that.
Sort of put it out of its misery, or maybe more gently just help it along.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Which, again, I feel like I need to clarify, like, because it's a monster, I don't want it to be like, put the wounded out of their misery. I feel like maybe it is humanizing Brayden a little bit, actually, like, because out of character, it's assumed we're learning about each other's characters. So I think it's maybe realizing like how long this has gone on somehow. Yeah,
I like that. That it doesn't change the fact that like to fulfill this prophecy, you need to put an end to Brayden, but it makes it a less violent inclination.
Right.
And more of now a like, not only does this reign of terror need to end, but like as a person, he needs to move on.
Right.
And then I guess we have to deal with the forest token,
which mechanically it's at 2 out of 3 now. So that means if the forest or the land gets one more token, it overcomes us both. So that's mechanically something we should definitely talk about how to balance that. Yeah.
First I will narrate what happens, and then we can discuss how we're able to lower that number, because that is real close to making this a very short session.
Yeah.
So I think what happens is as Mazara is looking at this crutch and kind of cleaning the spider webs off of it and reflecting on some of the like very old stories about Brayden that, you know, some people say are false, that he was once just a surgeon in the war. There is this sound that at first sounds kind of like that strange, noisy silence of snow falling on more snow. And then becomes louder, and just these little plinking noises, almost like snow that's turned to rain, and the raindrops falling and hitting the ground. And it's at that point that Mazara notices the noise and looks around, and we see from all of these dead trees that surround her, spiders pouring out of the holes in these dead trees. And the spiders are this kind of sickly mottled color. And we see the signs that fungus has infected them.
Mm-hmm.
There are strange shoots and tendrils breaking forth through their exoskeletons that kind of weave and wave in the air as these spiders pour forth and begin to surround Mazara. Just thousands and thousands of these sickly, rot-infested arachnids.
I love it. That's really good. Even though we don't necessarily know like the distance and landscape between these characters, the sort of meta view of it is that those things threaten both of our characters. So I feel like in some way Brayden would at least be aware of this, or you know what I mean?
Maybe we see like the spiders are kind of coming from everywhere and going everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And just overwhelming this whole area, like whatever has awakened them.
Yeah.
Is now they are everywhere.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So let's, I guess, talk for a moment about how we may be able to lower the number of tokens the forest has.
Mm-hmm. So that is basically, it's called the challenge roll. It's a version of the risk roll from Trophy. Where do you want to have Brayden do that, and we can kind of talk it through, or do you want a quick recap? Overview? Yeah,
I think that's probably good, because I think Brayden would probably not love what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, because again, mechanic wise, if you do the other roll, there's a chance that could end it, which is it's a choice. Yeah, maybe we just talk it through how the challenge roll is when a character faces the dangers of the landscape directly. So it's always a choice. You can sort of continue your search, or you can try to keep those threats at bay. But
okay.
Yeah, so if you're facing it directly, I'm picturing also that if they're sort of swarming everywhere and they've been awakened, they're like coming out of the cracks in the stones of that ruined fort. Not even the spider part that threatens Brayden, but it's the fungus that they're infected with, like spores falling off, and it's the rot, you know, it's toxic, and it's sort of drowning out life. It's animating these creatures. I'm picturing too, like it's taken over their bodies, like you described earlier, like that zombie ant or something you mentioned.
Yeah, the cordyceps fungus. I don't know if you've ever watched videos of zombie ants, but they're fucking terrifying.
I did recently, actually. It's so creepy. Yeah, it
is. I lived so much of my life with zombies as like a high level fictional thing that I thought a lot about. Mm-hmm. And then I watched a video of zombie ants, and I was like, oh no, that's not Why is this a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that idea of this being a moment where Brayden is worrying about the rot. So let me think. I love that image too of them like crawling out of all of the cracks in the stone and.
So the sort of obvious things that could go wrong is, I mean, the rot has taken control of these creatures, it seems like, and if it fully, infests Brayden, it takes control of him. So whatever he hopes to do, that's kind of what's at stake, is maybe retaining control over his limbs,
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that we see Brayden is back. Like at last we left him, he was preparing for what might come, and I don't think he expected what might come to be a host of fungus rot infected spiders. So I think as we see him standing there in the ruins of this fort, and we see these spiders kind of welling up and covering everything, we get this kind of glimpse of Brayden looking around furiously, trying to find a way out of this area so that he can find some way to fight back. And we see he throws off his cloak. And we realize that part of the reason why this cloak looked so ill-fitting is because when he throws off his cloak, he has all of these arms sewn up and down his sides. And again, we see that his legs are thin and gnarled and just withered and unusable. And he quickly kind of propels himself forward using just all of these arms, all of these too many limbs. And he tries to kind of pull himself up some remnant of the stone fort to get to higher ground. And I don't know, do I use a charm or something else?
Definitely have some interesting skills, so you could really go either way. It's also, I guess, like how you hope to like reduce this threat or push it back somehow, or something else.
Yeah, I think that maybe, and this is kind of combining two of the skills, but maybe what he does is as he gets up higher into the fort, there's an area where he stores the bits of cast-offs that he plans on using for future experiments, and throws some of those down to try and persuade or mesmerize the spiders and kind of get them to gather in one place by kind of throwing these bodies down as a lure for them. To try to get them into one place and not on him.
Right. I feel like that's almost like all of your skills right there.
Yeah, it's a little bit of climbing, flesh, and glamour.
Yeah,
and even adaptation, kind of trying to think on his feet.
Nice.
So that'll give me a light die. I don't have a scar, and I don't think I'm using a charm yet. That might be a future thing. But I do think that I am risking body and mind. I think that Brayden is terrified of this fungus, and for many reasons. I think that he's kind of in this crazed attempt to get away. So that'll give me one light die and one dark die. So a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. So I did get a 5. But I also got a 1 on my dark die.
Right. Yeah. So in token, sort of a different approach to this from your other trophy games. If you roll a 1 on a dark die, you gain a scar. But with the 4 to 5 result, it is a complication, and you mechanically you remove a token from the forest. So you get to describe the success, what that looks like. I'll add a complication, and then when you gain a scar, you'll describe what that is as well. But maybe you should start with the success.
Okay, so I think that, again, we see, and it's this kind of terrifying in its unnaturalness, the way that he pulls his body up this wall using his many limbs. And it's particularly weird because, again, like the lower half of his body is withered and sort of just hangs there and isn't used at all. And he gets himself up to this height and finds this little room full of various bodies in various amount of disrepair. And he finds kind of the freshest one available, the one with the most meat. And he throws it down over the edge, and we see just all of these spiders start to swarm over it.
And their attention is drawn away from you as they're feasting. Do you think that's what adds to the scar, or do you want to wait till I describe the other complication?
I guess give me the complication, and then because I have an idea for the scar.
Cool.
And then your complication might increase that.
Okay. So I think the complication is that these like fungal spiders have been swarming out of the stonework, so to speak, and up out of the ground. And the ruins of this fort and the tower were already kind of crumbling and leaning. And as this swarm just like dislodged the earth and the stones, it causes the ruins to shift. And the fort that was already sinking into this mire very gradually starts to shift and crumble a little bit and start to sink very slowly into the mire. There's bubbles coming up over the sides of the stones. And you know that you maybe can't stay here much longer. You might fall back into this swarm of spiders. So sooner or later, you're going to have to escape and venture further away.
That's good. I like that a lot. Okay, so as far as the scar goes, I think this deepens kind of an old wound, so to speak, and I think that again, as Brayden kind of looks around and is trying to figure out a way, what his best exit strategy is now that this his home is sinking into the mire. Mm-hmm. He takes one last look down and is watching as the spider swarm crawls over this body. And we see a flashback to him even younger than the last flashback. Mm. Maybe mid-teens. The first war that rocked this area has not happened yet, but is looming on the horizon. And we see a young Brayden standing and practicing with one of those spears and training, and so set on becoming a soldier to defend this home. And then we see one night as he sleeps, we see him getting bitten by a spider. And we see this kind of gradual montage of him unconscious and near death, fighting off the poison coursing through his veins. And we see his legs kind of atrophy and begin to wither as we see kind of this war coming closer, his one chance to become a great warrior like he had hoped, slipping away as he fights for his life in the bed. And I think just thinking about all of that again for maybe the first time in decades, and watching these spiders consume this body is just a little bit too much for him to bear.
Because it's about him personally, even though he's done all kinds of experiments and operations on other bodies and limbs. That's what name would you give that scar? So you could write it in as like a single word or just a summary to remind yourself of that, because as the game progresses, you can choose to invoke your own scar for another dark dice.
Okay. What would I name that? I think maybe something like Shattered Dreams.
Yeah, there you go.
That idea that the thing that he wanted most was taken from him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
And at least now we're down to one forest token, so we're not
not immediately
looming on complete chaos.
Mm-hmm. So since you've had the roll and the result, then it jumps back to the other character. So Mazara is surrounded by more of those fungal spiders. I think narratively she has to face them. I don't think I can just wander down the path and think about things. I think she's going to have to confront them. So it would be another challenge roll.
Okay.
Unless, I guess here's the other, I don't know if you think it's interesting or not. Unless you feel like they're called away, if this is close by, if they're like drawn towards that corpse that Brayden threw down, or if they're further apart, I think it makes sense for her to face them.
So I guess the one possibility that, like, because of the complication you added, mm-hmm. with the fort beginning to sink, mm-hmm. it is possible that maybe like more of those bodies that Brayden had mm-hmm. are falling down. And I imagine that like as these kind of fungal zombie spiders, they have kind of a hive mind.
Oh, that's cool.
So like if you think narratively a reflection roll is more interesting right now, I think we could easily make it make sense that like all of these spiders are being drawn to this place where there's all of this food now available to them.
I kind of think that's an even more interesting image, as she's surrounded by them, but they kind of pause and they start just like climbing over and around her, just like slowly going to, in this one direction. And she doesn't necessarily know why.
Yeah, I think that is really like that kind of impending doom. Mm-hmm. That she must be feeling surrounded by these, and then like there's easier food elsewhere, so they don't even bother.
Mm-hmm. I think she kind of like tries to draw her cloak over her face a little bit as they're just crawling over. And I don't know, feel free to come back to that later with like we described this like this rot and these spores and this fungus all over everything. Like if they're crawling around and over her, I don't think she's free of harm, but I don't think she's fighting them off this moment either.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Cool. That makes sense to me.
So she has cleared the webbing. Is there anything in the landscape that she sees beyond that? So we've got like the webbing that's blown away a little bit, and maybe the mire sinking and bubbling a little bit, so shifting the landscape. Yeah,
so I think that maybe to continue to play off of this image, maybe beyond this kind of initial area, this copse of trees, there's kind of like a hilly plain beyond, so that Mazara can still see this kind of like undulating wave of spiders mm-hmm. fleeing towards the deep forest in the distance.
Yeah.
And it kind of rises out of the mire a little bit, but the grass is still, because of this rot, is still this kind of like sickly yellow and dying color. And it's being kind of completely overtaken by these hordes of spiders running off towards the forest.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I think she's going to follow them, because it's very disconcerting, even more than if they had attacked her, that they surrounded her and then were drawn to something else and ignored her. I think she's going to take that as a sign, or at least as some sort of omen, and follow their path towards that opening, that clearing. So I'm going to make a reflection roll. And this is really, I think, looking for signs of Brayden.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, like where are these things going? So one light die for seeking the other, and then skills or rituals, charms. I think I think if it makes sense, I might use my skill in guidance to be guided by them.
I was actually just thinking that.
Okay.
Like, it's
Cool.
a really cool kind of sort of, you know what makes the best student.
Right. And I think Mazara used to be, a mentor to her nieces and nephews, and used to be the one kind of, watching them run down the path in the forest and kind of following from behind to keep an eye and make sure they were safe, but letting them run free a little bit. But it's a very, very different version of that, just seeing where they go. So 2 light dice. It's a 3 and a 5. So it's that the highest one being a 5 is that middle result. So I gain a token, but I encounter something dreadful.
All right.
And the forest gains a token, sorry.
Okay.
So those can be, yeah.
All right. So forest tokens go up to 2. Mazara has 2 tokens now, though, so that's...
Yeah. I think she's running she's keeping pace with them. I'm kind of picturing them as being unnaturally fast if they're hungrily drawn towards this other, towards that feast. So she's not far from them. She's kind of jogging behind maybe. So I guess you would describe whatever order you want, really. Token, and with the landscape or the forest gaining a token, that can also be a totally new threat if you want it to be, or it can be an escalation of the things we've already described.
Okay. So let me think. I guess token kind of makes the most sense to start with. Let me think on that for 1 second.
Mm-hmm. So just for, inspiration, or for people listening, a couple things about tokens is, again, they can be physical objects or offerings, but narratively they could also be things that were dropped in haste or placed as a lure, or just evidence of signs of the other.
So yeah, I think maybe as Mazara is following these spiders, you kind of travel through this plain, watching them undulate up and down the grassy hills. And you get to the edge of the forest, and they begin to enter into the forest. And you see kind of on a number of the trees at the very edge of the forest, a symbol carved into the tree that is this kind of crudely drawn combination of man and spider that maybe once held some kind of magic, maybe was some sort of protection spell, but has, with the rot particularly, I think the rot kind of killing off so many of these trees has kind of seeped the magic out of the symbol, seeped the power out of the symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So now it is just kind of a bygone remembrancer of the fact that this is the Recluse's forest.
Yeah, I like that. I think that the way that changes Mazara's instinct. So currently it is, I seek to lay to rest the monster which haunts this place, so that I may fulfill an oath or prophecy. I'm gonna have to think about that for a second, actually. I want to tie it to the prophecy.
Okay.
Because it's such an obvious symbol. So, yeah, I want to wait on that for a second. Do you have any other... Let me go back to that roll for a second.
So the something terrible that happens, or something dreadful that happens.
I mean, that could be it too, but, it's an excuse to double down on it, I guess.
Yeah. What?
Okay, I'm starting to have an idea. I'm thinking that it's sort of like a growing dread and a growing realization of the prophecy. It's sort of like this nightmarish image here is sort of like, and this may or may not be true, but I think Mazara recalls the rest of her visions, where first she'd seen this rot and these deformed creatures with all these added limbs. And then she kind of has this flashback to the moment where she would wake up from this nightmare or when she'd come back into consciousness from her meditations, but she saw herself with many limbs at the end.
Ooh.
And sort of, I think she's like very conflicted now and trying to maybe deny what she part of her knows that might mean, but that maybe the only way to ensure that this like family curse doesn't continue the way it is to sort of take it on herself.
I like that. That is good.
So maybe this is a big jump, but I feel like I'm okay with that in the story. But I'm gonna change her instinct from I seek to lay to rest the monster to I seek to become the dweller of this place.
That is a big jump, but I like it.
And maybe it's not in the same form, but sort of take the place of that creature, and maybe she can prevent her family line from being affected by this. If she just, whatever way this has affected her and drawn her in, if she can be the one who just stays here far away from them, they'll be safe.
Okay. That plays in really good to my thoughts on something dreadful.
Uh-huh.
Because what I was thinking is to continue to play with the image of the spiders in the rot kind of disrupting this mire.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you see as these spiders kind of enter the woods, and like they have become this almost like wave of spiders, and as they enter in, you see the trees actually start to kind of tumble and fall and begin to like get sucked into this kind of awful marsh where the spiders are kind of causing the are speeding up the process of the marsh reclaiming everything.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly in this, like, just in the moments directly after Mazara kind of reconciling herself to becoming the dweller of this place, she sees that the place is beginning to be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
The very woods themselves are being reclaimed by the marsh.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Because once again, the forest is 2 out of 3 from...
Yeah, so it is back up to winning. And in this case, it's the forest is kind of losing, but the rot is winning.
Right. Awesome.
Which is kind of a beautiful, awful kind of image.
Yeah. I mean, it's a scarred, polluted landscape, and, with these kind of games, part of me just is rooting for the landscape, for the horror to win in that way, and just bury the tragic, terrible past and like regrow and make something new. Yeah.
And I feel like, and especially with that turn for your character, like both of our characters have such a deep love of this place for different reasons.
Yeah.
Or a deep desire of this place for different reasons, and now both of us are threatened to lose it.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So then it jumps back to you. So,
all right. So what is Brayden doing? I think we see the fort is continuing to sink, and chunks of stone are falling into this marsh. The bubbles are coming up, and I think we see Brayden. I mean, all fours is not quite the right term. But as the fort kind of tilts, and like originally he was vertical, but is slowly becoming more horizontal as the fort tumbles into the marsh. I think he uses his arms to propel himself forward and run almost like a beast away from where these spiders are coalescing, hoping to find something he might be able to use to destroy these spiders.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't think I'm seeking you right now.
Sure.
I feel like this is another challenge roll. I feel like Brayden has kind of become reflexive, where like in the back of his mind, he's probably still worried about the fact that someone is entering his forest.
Mm-hmm.
But more specifically, at the front of his mind, he's trying to deal with the rot overtaking him.
Right, yeah. So there'd be a challenge roll because it's facing that threat directly.
So I'm trying to think of how.
Mm-hmm. I guess one question is has he sort of fled that location further, do you think? Or I don't know. There's a few ways you could look at it.
I don't think he's moving too far. I think what he's doing is kind of trying to search around to find something that might be able to create like a large enough fire.
Oh, cool.
To like light these fungal spiders ablaze, because that's both. Not only would it destroy their physical bodies, but it would also potentially destroy the spores that they're spreading around.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think maybe adaptation.
Yeah, like that.
Kind of trying to find something that he can use for this task that might not normally be used for such a task. So that's one. I think I want to, instead of using a charm, I think I want to invoke my scar.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of shattered dreams, like he's currently literally watching his current life crumble and fall apart, and like any hope he has to continue his work is currently sinking into the mire or being consumed by spiders.
Right, right.
So he's literally watching his dreams shatter.
I have an idea for as far as finding. So is he looking for things that might be flammable?
Yeah, something that would create a big enough fire. Because at this point, I mean, there are so many spiders.
I think at least one thing is, going off of themes that have come before, there's maybe like a pile of crutches or canes or equipment, or maybe it's his equipment, maybe, that he uses, but
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that plays really well into Shattered Dreams too, where like he needs to like throw his surgical table among other things like into this area to create a big enough fire. And like all of his dreams are just are shattering in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, I'm risking body and mind because I think that he's kind of reached this like crazed place of like everything is coming to a head all at once. Like he has this intruder that's carrying an artifact from his past coming into the woods. The rot is overcoming everything that he knows and loves in this forest is shattering in front of him. So I think that he's willing to risk both body and mind to try and save it all.
Absolutely.
So that'll be 1 light die and 2 dark die.
Excellent.
What could go wrong?
Oh, I mean, I guess we are actually supposed to say that too. I mean, things that could go wrong is, I mean, you're setting this big fire in a semi-enclosed space, or you could burn yourself, or even like the rot catching fire might make some sort of toxic fumes.
Yeah. There's a lot that could go wrong right here. Yeah. I got a 6 on my light die.
Mm-hmm.
But I did get a 3 and a 1 on my dark dice.
So only the 1 matters for scars for that. So because your highest roll was a 6, you succeed, but you also get a scar in the process.
Okay, so the forest tokens go down to 1.
Mm-hmm. So what does that look like? I mean, with your creating this bonfire?
Yeah, so I think that like maybe we see again like this kind of animalistic form of Brayden using these limbs upon limbs upon limbs to run quickly through the forest, and like he runs through the ruins and throws his lab table and some of his lab equipment and some of these herbs and powders that he's gathered. And I think that maybe we even see him like find a couple of corpses that he throws, and he's able to like draw the spiders towards these areas where there are some like gathering marsh gases.
Oh, nice.
And so I think for the scar, this might be a very physical thing. I think in order to get that all to catch fire, he has to get closer.
Oh, nice.
Than he'd like to where he starts the fire.
Right.
And so he is able to start this kind of giant bonfire that is able to like destroy not necessarily all of the spiders, but it kills many of the spiders and burns off the spores that they are giving off. But the fire definitely spreads fast and spreads far and kind of partially engulfs him as well.
I like the idea of mentioning marsh gas in there too. So even if there's not a lot of obviously flammable stuff, like it does catch flame and spread. A sinking, burning landscape.
And yes, I will call my new scar Burned, because I think like we hear this scream echo through the woods as like some of his clothes catches fire and like his hair burns. And we see him just covered in flame as he tries to kind of escape the inferno that he's created.
That's amazing. So I think I do want to mention mechanically that because you have 2 scars, if you get the 3rd scar, your character dies. Those things take their toll. The way you can reduce scars is through enticements, which is offering a token to heal one of your scars.
Okay.
And I didn't really mention this at the beginning, but there may be some rules and terms in this game that change by the time people get the final game. So currently, the way I'm doing that is that when you offer a token, the forest also recoils or retaliates in some way. So that is giving a token to the forest as well.
Okay.
So that's sort of the cost, but it keeps yourself alive longer.
Yeah, it puts us we're in an interesting point mechanically speaking, like in the metagame.
Yeah.
Because you are at 2 tokens.
Right.
Which means if I give you a token to heal a scar,
right.
And I mean, like, again, this is a play to tell the story, so I'm not losing, quote unquote, but like.
But your character might not want to do that either. Like,
I am sort of losing,
right?
Because in order to heal a scar, I have to let you move to 3 tokens.
Yeah.
So I'll have to think about that. But
yeah, absolutely. It's a tension between sort of self-preservation, reaching your goal, and keeping all the threats at bay. So.
Yeah. I like that a lot. That is a nice. It creates a very interesting narrative tension.
Yeah, I think as far as the ending of that scene, if your fort is crumbling around you, everything's aflame, you're getting burned as well yourself. I kind of, just for the sake of narrative, want to look at any other surroundings just outside your fort, just because we haven't mentioned it really quick.
Yeah, so I mean, I was kind of imagining this as like it's mostly like thick forest between kind of right where Mazara is now, like right where the forest proper begins. And then kind of it's a direct line of this like thick marshy forest kind of straight to the fort.
Yeah, I like that.
So I'm kind of imagining that like Mazara would see
the flames from here, maybe
see all of this flame and probably like parts of the fort sinking into the ground deeper into the woods.
I like that. I'm picturing too, like there being a fort. Maybe there's other sort of stone elements that are like even older ruins. Like there's maybe remnants of a stone bridge that used to lead out from the fort. Maybe
I like that a lot.
Some kind of monument or statue that's out there. There's just other signs that there used to be, beautiful forms of civilization before the wars happened that have just fallen into decay as well. Just layers of that. And
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. One thing, if this works for you, that I'd like to add potentially, when we see this statue, this kind of old monument, I think that maybe Mazara wouldn't realize this, but like the viewer of this story would realize that the person emblazoned in this monument bears a resemblance to Brayden.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Like, how old is Brayden? Who knows?
Yeah. But it looks like, I mean, probably not Brayden proper, since we already know that his childhood was not the best. But there's a familial relationship to whoever the statue is honoring.
I like that. I think there's like something at the back of Mazara's mind, if she's seeing that, if she's starting to approach this blaze, and it's like not quite connecting yet, but she's compelled onwards with that sense of like inevitable prophecy, whether she's still like somewhat unwilling, but knows that like no one else from her family line has come here to deal with this. I think that I don't know if you have ideas about the curse. I haven't come back to that, but I think maybe there's like, I'm going to connect it to the rot, actually. Maybe she has family that was involved in some of the wars, maybe as soldiers or maybe just as laborers who had to come out here and like dig the trenches and like tend to the wounded and carry off bodies and rebuild and that kind of thing.
I like that a lot. And the rot itself is kind of it's nature's response to the evils that humanity has done in this place.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, that she needs to get to the source of it and not be one to spread it and sort of take it on herself by facing this entity. But
I like that a lot. That is really good.
Yeah, so I'm thinking the combination of seeing this strange statue that she doesn't quite understand and seeing those flames in the distance from maybe through some undergrowth and like the hints of that fort. I'm going to make a reflection roll.
Okay.
So reflecting on my instinct is the light die. I still haven't managed to get scars. I guess I wasn't reckless enough early on with this. But I think it's time to get weird with it a little bit. I think she's going to use a charm.
Excellent. I like it.
I may or may not have wanted to do this earlier in the game, but I think the charm she's going to use is beast form.
Excellent.
Which is, take a form halfway between human and animal. But before she does this, I think she's going to take out that obsidian spearhead again, and she has like a leather thong of a necklace that has like a couple other charms on it, and use that to wrap around the head of this heavy spearhead and attach it to her staff to make this spear, which who knows how effective it might really be. It's more of this ritual object than anything. And I think because those fungal spiders have crawled all around her and over her before, I do think that is tying back to the family curse, because as she's weaving and tying this thong around the head of the spear to make it into a functional weapon, you see like the robes kind of fall off of her forearms for a second, and her skin is all sort of blackened and sort of necrotic, which was covered up by these, her robes and bandages before. And I think that's sort of what makes her resolute in this kind of final confrontation, is knowing that the curse is progressed in her own flesh, and it's only a matter of time. But she wants to finally do something to preserve the future, children of her family line, and keep them from catching this too. So the ritual that she does, her human arms hold the spear, And as she kind of closes her eyes and like flexes, I'm going to say that another pair of limbs emerge from her sides, kind of echoing.
Excellent.
So maybe not as advanced, or as horrifying yet as Brayden's form, but she has an extra pair of limbs, and she uses that to now charge towards the fort. That's what she's picturing anyway. So dark dice for the charm and light dice for the instinct. So 5 on the dark dice, 1 on the light dice. So I gain a token. I encounter something dreadful. Yeah,
All
what?
Right.
Yeah, I want to see what you have to add and then just build on that.
That is... So I think that maybe the token that you find... I love this image of, Mazara now like half beast, half human, not as many-limbed as Brayden, but getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And we see Mazara like moving through this area that obviously used to be kind of the village that surrounded the fort. And we see kind of the ruins here and there of old stone houses and buildings leading up to where the wall itself around the fort proper has crumbled away entirely. And I think there's one house that's not anywhere near fully intact, but it hasn't sunk below the marsh line yet. Mm-hmm. So even though the walls have fallen away, as Mazara kind of runs through the marsh, she hits this point where like she runs across the stones of this house's floor. And something, despite the bestial fury with which she is heading towards this confrontation, something catches her eye enough to stop her, maybe for just a moment,
mm-hmm.
which is a piece of jewelry in the ruins of this house that bears a crest that was also on a piece of jewelry that her mother had.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. I think the crest might definitely have like a small scythe and like herbs, maybe like apothecary kind of symbols.
I like that.
Maybe, once people who gathered from the edges of this place and prepared medicines. Yeah. So I think Mazara pauses. So Mazara reaches down and picks up that necklace with that family crest symbol on it and looks on it, and is just kind of fully resigned now, fully committed to this, dealing with this family curse for good. I think there's like a flashback of her remembering her mother treating the sick, maybe people who started coming back from this area with some strange signs of the rot that was early and unexplained, and treating it, but maybe seeing her mother deal with worse and worse cases. And then maybe in those early wars, just the nearby village being overwhelmed both by like military occupation, but also injuries from the wars and from the way the land was lashing out and responding in kind, and kind of resigned, wraps that around the head of her spear to attach it even more firmly, and is going to charge or half scuttle, I guess, with her extra limbs now towards those flames and into that fort. What do you think she sees? So narratively or mechanically, I sort of describe how I act on my instinct, but I kind of want to see, like, from your side, what she sees when she looks on you first, like Brayden coming out of the fort.
So, yeah, I think there's kind of an almost an accidental meeting,
mm-hmm.
where Brayden has vanquished the spiders But now the fort is kind of crumbling, especially with the explosions from the marsh gases.
Mm-hmm.
The fort is crumbling even faster now, and so he's just fleeing kind of feral. And he runs out of the crumbling bit of the fort, and there's stones falling around.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks up and he sees Mazara running towards him, bestial in her own way, wielding this spear that he remembers from his younger years. And what you see is this old man that is now probably almost even too burnt for Mazara to connect to that statue.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the skin on a majority of his face is kind of burnt and puckered. And then the rest of his face are all of these old creases and wrinkles. And his hair has mostly burned away. And his beard has mostly burned away. And his clothes there are large holes burnt in various places. And she can see his withered legs and all of these various limbs that he has grafted onto himself over the years, charging towards her, kind of almost unaware that she is there, like he is just fleeing in escape.
I like that, and I realize I didn't describe my instinct changing from that last token. I want to change that, but also mention that because I've got 3 tokens, this is also a moment when you reveal what your secret is. And if you want to sort of mention anything there that might, any other evidence at the very end that might change my instinct, you have the opportunity to do that. I think from the last token with that necklace, I think all that changes, I don't know if it makes sense, but instead of fulfilling a prophecy, I think Mazara just wants to like shatter a prophecy. Like she wants to put an end to this, but she doesn't want to have to be the one stuck here either. She just wants to like lay all of it to rest. So,
okay. And this might play into it.
Yeah.
To some extent. So I think that the sign of my secret that you see is that I think burnt away, like part of Brayden's shirt is burnt away. And you can see as he's charging towards you that Brayden is wearing a necklace that has that same scythe and herbs crest emblazoned upon it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So here's Mazara's final act, and feel free to add to it at the end. But I think as she's charging in, one of the last things she glimpses before just charging towards Brayden is that necklace and that recognition and the thought that none of this really should have happened to any of these people, that none of this was right. But the best and most powerful thing she can do at the end here is just put an end to it. And she's going to, first she's holding that spear like she's going to thrust it at Brayden. But I think at the last moment, she throws the spear into the flames, and with her extra limbs, wraps them around Brayden, grappling him in this embrace, and kind of dives and pulls both of them back into the flames. It's sort of a final sacrifice that there won't be a dweller of this place anymore, perpetuating these horrors and hoping that the sinking mire and the flames and the everything resetting in this landscape might give a chance for new life, and maybe one day for new people to come and live here again at the edge of the mire and the swamp.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you to Gabriel for designing such a cool game and coming on the show to give us a first look. And thank you to you for listening. If you like what you heard, please check out the Kickstarter for tokens starting on February 9th and help make the book a reality. Our theme song is Everybody Knows My Name by Harley Poe. Thank you to Joe Whiteford for letting us use it. Join us on February 19th when the Troll Hands Takeover continues. We play Gabriel Robinson's first game, Candlelight. Until then, remember that you are strong. You are beautiful. And you are not alone.
From the stream, I'll set them free. Through cancer and disease, I'll take with me whom I please. No need to run, you can fight and face defeat. Through religion and deceit, and science and conceit, try to stop me, but in the end, I can't be beat. I'll be at it once again, you'll face me in the end. It should be fun, as I swat you down like flies. So when it's time for you to go, don't you cry, cause don't you know it's appointed once for every man to die. But what happens when you're dead ain't my problem, but I've read you'll burn in hell for all eternity. Life wasn't all that great, but please make no mistake, it gets much worse after you've met me. I'm the reason you sick ones pray to God as they lie there still. I'm the reason they cry out, because I